Welcome to the 2024 VBridger tutorial official part 3, mouths. This video is all about mouths. The real-time rig for this was 1 hour and 35 minutes. I'm not sure how long the tutorial will be once it's edited, but let's get into it. As always, we'll start with the prep work by meshing the art. After meshing, we'll add deformers and get into the parameters, and then we'll get into the rigging itself. Even if you know how to rig mouths fairly well already, I recommend watching the full process, as some of the way deformers are handled will improve your VBridger results. As always, I'll add chapters on YouTube with timestamps, so you can find the section of the video that applies most to you. The art and masks were prepped and explained in part 1 of this tutorial. I won't re-explain the masks here, so if you're not sure why I have certain layers set up a certain way, please check the part 1 of the tutorial. Starting with the lip meshes, it's best to edit the lip lines and lip masks together, as they will share the same mesh so that they can be glued together later. The masks are usually, and currently, invisible. To ensure you can see the meshes while you're editing them, choose Show Model Image Display Mode. When you enter Edit Mode, the order that you selected your meshes in determines which mesh is on top. In my previous video, I had said it was based on hierarchy. I was wrong. It's based on the order that you select the meshes in. I just always select them from top down, so I thought it was the hierarchy because I'm a silly goober. Meshes in Show Model Image mode are displayed with the first selected on the bottom and last selected on the top. So if I select the mask first, then the lip line, it will render the lip line on top of the mask when we edit the meshes. Turn Mirror Edit mode on and make sure that it's lined up with the middle of your model. If it isn't in the exact middle, we need to do a little bit of work. Vtube has a few mirroring tools, and they all work a little bit differently. If you create a mesh with mirror mode on, it will use the Symmetry line. But if you right-click in Mesh Edit mode and mirror the mesh horizontally using the menu, it will use the center of the canvas, not your Symmetry line. So if your model isn't centered on your canvas, you won't be able to use this feature effectively. The Symmetry ruler, while you can also adjust it to your model, will reset every time you open the file, so you have to manually adjust it every time you work on a project as well. It will always put it by default in the center of the canvas. For this reason, it is better to simply adjust the canvas itself in Vtube. To properly adjust your canvas size, first find the center of your model. This will either be a value with 0 in the decimal or a 0.5, depending on what kind of symmetry ruler your artist used. In my case, I have 1 pixel in the center of my model, so I have a 0.5 value. Then you'll want to copy that number so that we can multiply it by 2 later. To adjust the canvas size, go under File and then Canvas Settings, and then you'll be able to see the dimensions of your current canvas, and then there's like a little grid that lets you choose where you're changing the size from. Always make sure when you're adjusting your canvas size at all that you're doing so from the top left corner. This prevents any issues with loading in your PSD in the future, as it uses this corner as a reference point for art mesh placement. If you change the canvas size from any of the other positions, you run the risk of messing up all of your model positioning. So creating new art meshes from layers will be in the wrong spot, and resetting the art mesh position of any of your existing layers will put them in the wrong spot. So make absolutely sure that you are selecting the top left corner when you are changing the canvas size in any way, shape, or form. Now we just have to multiply our model center value by 2 and change the width of the canvas. Even if your canvas ends up smaller than your model's art, it will be fine, as canvas size in Vtube doesn't cut off the art in any way. This will ensure that your canvas is always on the center of your model. Back to the lips now. we're going to add a vertex in the middle of the corner of the lip line. This should align with the mask in the background there for the most part. And from this point to the middle of the lips, the mask and the lip line will be meshed together. Using the stroke mesh mapping tool with a relatively high density, draw a line along the lip and adjust it to match. Then change the width by holding Ctrl to fit it to the width of your lip line. Connect the center and flatten out the corner, and we're done the shared mesh. Click on the empty space next to your art now. It will deselect both meshes. If you click on empty space again, you can pick a specific mesh to work on. We will select the lip line. We'll mesh around the corner where it doesn't currently have mesh to make sure that it's all connected and that all of our art has mesh. And then we will switch to the mask layer. We're going to connect all the outer edges of the end of where it shares mesh with the lip to the far edge of the mask layer. Make sure that the flat horizontal edge of the mask here is covered by mesh. Don't cut it off. There's a chance that it can be seen depending on how you rig the mouth, so we want to make sure that we don't leave a harsh aliased edge by having the mesh cut off the art here. Don't add vertices anywhere between the end of the lip line and the edge of the mask along this line. You don't need them and they will just get in the way later. Keep the number of vertices on the outside of the mask to a minimum. You don't need very many. It also doesn't matter if you cut the art off along the outer edge, as this edge of the art will never be seen. The important thing here is to make sure that all of the lip vertices connect to the outer mask and never to each other. That covers the lip line and mask. Next we will do the lip texture, which you may or may not have. Use the same or more mesh density as you did for the lip line. If you use less density, you'll generally run into the art getting choppy on shapes like funnel. And if you have very thick lips, I recommend using a higher density than you did for your lip line, as any changes that you do to the mouth shape end up multiplied on the outer edges of lip texture. You can add as many vertices vertically along the lip as you think you might need for your art. We'll repeat the process of the top lip for the bottom lip. I'm skipping adding the single vert on the edge, as that was mostly to explain where the shared mesh starts and ends. You can just use the stroke easily once you understand where everything should line up. Just make sure it ends close enough to the center of the lip corner where the lip mask comes from, and you'll be fine. I have two masks for the bottom lip, so I'm repeating the mask mesh process twice. It's hard to see if the lip is connecting to the edge of the mask properly because my masks are bright colors, so I switched to modeling view where my masks are invisible to check and make sure that the lip vertices are always connecting to the outer edge of the masks. I forgot to mesh the lower lip texture until way later in the recording because I'm a silly goober. Don't worry about the blur, I'm just hiding things that we haven't gotten into yet so there's less confusion. For the mesh details, my lip is very flat and it just has the highlight, so I only need to mesh the highlight. Once your lip meshes are complete, it's time to glue the lip lines to the mask. Select the lower lip line, then the lower lip mask, go into edit mode, select the shared vertices. Don't select any of the vertices that aren't actually shared between the meshes. Sometimes it will glue things that you don't intend to get glued. Repeat the process on the bottom lip line and the inverted bottom lip mask, and then repeat the process again on the top lip line and the mask for the top lip. If you've selected everything in the right order, lip line first, then mask, you can grab all your glues at once and paint it all red with the glue edit mode. Now your lip lines should control your masks, and animating the lips alone will reveal the inner mouth when they separate. The lips are meshed, time to move on to the inner mouth. Right now the inner mouth is completely blocked by my outer lips, so I'm just going to turn off the entire outer mouth folder that I have, and this will remove the masking effects and make it so I can actually see what I'm doing. Meshing the inner mouth depends a lot on the art that you're using, so frankly, do whatever you're comfortable with. I'm using a specific method that works well with flat, standard anime teeth. good luck. I have an upper teeth mask. This is for the tongue. You don't need it if you either don't plan on rigging the tongue or you don't have a tongue that has lines. The tongue will be a different video entirely, and I will cover the specifics there. For now, I'll just glue this mask to my upper teeth, so I'll mesh them together. I like to give my teeth a decent amount of mesh definition. This will keep it super smooth for any jaw and head angle motion that we add later. The front bottom teeth just need a lot of definition around the edges, so it moves smoothly when the head turns. It's not super complicated. Mine are super flat, so they don't really need any internal mesh. My tongue is also super flat and simple, so it only really needs mesh on the outer edge of it. The internals don't really need anything. Assuming your lower back teeth are relatively flat like mine, give them a lot of definition on the edges. You will need it. We don't really need any inner vertices because they are flatly shaded, so I'm not entirely sure how this method would apply to more detailed teeth. You're welcome to try it. I have not. Since I have both a left and a right side to my lower back teeth, I'm meshing them together, but then I will select each side individually by clicking on the blank space and just delete the empty mesh for the side that isn't on whatever side I have selected. The back of the mouth doesn't need any definition, the bare minimum. You never see the edges, so you can cut them off if you want. If you have throat texture though, of course do whatever you gotta do and add any mesh that you need. We'll also mesh the nose and head since our mouth shapes will impact these as well. My nose is super simple, it just needs a mesh line. I just make sure that I have a vertice between the light and the dark parts so I can split the nose there in half evenly and make a nice little point between the shading. For gradients like the nose blush, I like to make giant triangles and use a 4 division button several times and delete any mesh that goes too far off the art. Auto mesh is decent as well. I just don't like fiddling with the settings to get it perfect when doing it manually is pretty quick and gives me perfectly even deformation. For the head, it's best to mesh the line and head layers together even if you have 2 separate layers. This is so that the deformation always matches. If you have vertices in different places on these meshes, they can deform differently and create line thickness issues, especially if you are not using 10 billion vertices along the edge of your mesh. The more vertices you use, the less it matters, but using more vertices unnecessarily isn't ideal. So I'll make a high density mesh around the outer edge. You usually don't need much more definition in the middle. There just needs to be a few verts to help support the high density edges and prevent the mesh from crunching over itself. If you have an actual face texture like shading or gradients on your head layer, please consider separating it and using clipping instead. If you separate the texture of the face from the shape of the face, you can edit the silhouette separately from how the textures are moving, which makes it a lot easier to make the face look 3D. In my case, my art is very flat, so I just have a blush layer and my blush layer is separate and clipped. All of our meshes are done now, so let's make some deformers. My basic setup here was done in part 1 of the tutorial, so that's where we will be starting from. Grab your head meshes and create a new deformer and call it head XY jaw open. All of the main deformers that I plan to key on the head angles and jaw open will get a _XY_ jaw open in the name. This is so I know what they're for and it's very easy to find my way around the project later on. So we'll add a deformer for the nose, we'll call it nose XY jaw open, then we'll do the upper teeth XY jaw open, then the lower teeth front will go into a XY jaw open deformer. For the lower back teeth, I'm putting them in a deformer, but I'm going to name it upper XY jaw open, as we will be making a lower version of this later. Then we just need to add one for the tongue, the mouth back, and the lips. Next, select all of the lip layers except the masks, just the lines and textures, and create the lip deformer, outer lips XY jaw open. After you've added the deformer, make it nice and big by holding Control and scaling. It needs to be big enough that the lips can open vertically, get wider, and move left and right all within this deformer. I also like to line up the vertical center of the deformer with my lip corners. It just means that even when the lips are invisible, you kind of have an idea of where they are just by looking at the deformer. All the deformers and meshes are ready to go, so we will make the main mouth rigging parameters next so we can actually add keys. Create a new parameter, call it jaw open with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. Then create a mouth funnel parameter with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. Then create a mouth press lip open parameter with a minimum of -1 and a maximum of 1. Then mouth X with a minimum of -1 and maximum of 1. We will duplicate the mouth X parameter to create a blend shape version and add a BL to the name, and we'll check the blend shape box. Then create Mouth Pucker Widen with a minimum of -1 and a maximum of 1. We'll also make a blend shape version of Mouth Pucker Widen, and then make Mouth Shrug with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1, and we will make Mouth Shrug a blend shape. So we'll add the cheek parameters next. We'll treat it the same as brow inner up from the previous part of this tutorial. So we'll create a cheek puff C with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1, then duplicate it, renaming it to cheek puff R, turn it into a blend shape, then duplicate it again and call it cheek puff L. So now we have a control parameter and a left and right blend shape for the cheek puff. This is so we can use blend shape weights later on to activate and deactivate cheeks based on the head angle. VBridger mostly cares about the lips, so if you have your own method of doing the inner mouth, do whatever you're comfortable with. I'm going to show you how I do mine, and you can follow along if you want. If not, you can kind of just skip past the jaw part of the video. I'll put a timestamp in. Lower teeth are notoriously annoying to animate. I personally hate them. The method I'll teach you today uses glue to make them easier. Select the left and right along with the deformer and create a new folder. This will keep the inner mouth a little more organized in the project. Then select them all again and copy and paste. Rename the 2 in these copies to lower. Make sure that you also update the ID name. Leaving the number in any copied meshes gets really messy in larger projects, so it's really good to replace it with something more specific so that you know what the copy is for later on. Next, glue the left to the left lower and the right to the right lower. We will use this glue to control the 3D shape of the lower back teeth. It's a lot easier than trying to mess with the mesh or trying to make shapes with deformers. So we'll adjust the weight in a moment. Adjusting it right now won't be easy to see at all. First, add a new parameter. This is just so we can save the default positions of our deformers in case we ever need to change the art or need it back in its neutral position. It's always good to have a reset parameter if you ever change the default position of a deformer or an art mesh. You should always be able to return art to its original position by returning the deformer to its default position if you ever move it. We'll also use this reset parameter to help us adjust our lower back teeth glue, as it's impossible to see the effect of the glue without moving the art. I'll add keys to both the upper and lower deformers of the back teeth, then flatten the upper deformer upwards and the lower deformer downwards. Now if I slide the reset parameter over a bit, I can easily adjust the glue and actually see what it does. The whole inner edge should be red, red meaning the upper back teeth. The back edge should be mostly red, but starting to get kind of yellow. And the outer edge should be a blend of blue at the bottom with a smooth gradient up to the back of the teeth. When adjusting the reset parameter, this should already create a sort of 3D rotation of the teeth. Once the glue is properly weighted, we can move the lower jaw pieces into their proper place. Anything that gets moved needs keys on the reset parameter. My tongue layer is on top of my lower back teeth layers, so I make sure that the curve of the lower teeth stays consistent. If the tongue is too low, it'll be obvious that it's on top of the back teeth, and the back teeth will look too short compared to the bottom front teeth. Once your teeth look like they are properly closed and are looking good, we can start with the jaw open parameter. We'll put keys on all the lower jaw deformers on the jaw open parameter. We won't be moving the upper teeth at all. If your rigging style requires it, you'll have the option to add it at a later step. We'll use an overall deformer to move the whole mouth. I honestly haven't tried rigging this method while moving the upper teeth, so I don't know how well it will work. We start with jaw open because all of our lip shapes will be animated around where the teeth are visible, which means that we need the jaw first to know where the teeth will be. Only ever add 2 keys to jaw open. Many of the deformers that are keyed here will also have keys on head X and Y, and adding more than 2 keys is both unnecessary and becomes a nightmare when we get to the head angles. If you want the teeth to stay overlapped for a little bit at the beginning, move the lower jaw further up by default so that the overlap keeps the teeth together instead of adding more keys to force it. This is a trick that we use in 3D because we don't have fine control of blend shapes in 3D like we do in 2D, and it works pretty good. Move the lower jaw pieces down until the front middle teeth are wherever you want the jaw to be its widest. Then round them out and pull the back teeth and tongue up, and you'll have the illusion of rotation. Using glue on our back jaw gives us easy control of the 3D motion of the back teeth when we use the upper and lower deformers. So defining the jaw shape is quite easy this way. Make sure your tongue and teeth stay consistent so that your teeth are a smooth horseshoe shape if you choose to have your tongue on top of your teeth like I do. If you like the rotation motion that you have going on but you want it to be pushed further, you can always use the trick where we copy the default form with Ctrl Shift and C, then paste it with Ctrl Shift and B with a negative value on your key. This multiplies any of the changes made on the key that you're pasting to and creates a more extreme shape. Once the jaw is opening smoothly, we'll adjust the lip position using the outer lips XY jaw open deformer. Right now the deformer's in the folder for the outer mouth, so it actually isn't visible or editable unless I drag it out of the folder or re-enable the mouth itself. I want to leave the outer mouth turned off so I can see the whole inner mouth and make sure that I'm placing the lips in the right spot in relation to the jaw. In order to actually see what I'm doing, I'm going to select the lip line along with the deformer and hit S to isolate it. This will make it visible even if it's technically turned off. So when your jaw opens but you keep your mouth closed, in real life your lips stay pretty evenly between your upper and lower teeth, but that doesn't always look very good in 2D because it makes the face like super long depending on how wide you're opening your mouth. So I usually only move it down like a little bit, and then I make it a little bit thinner as well, because technically your face is stretching, so it would squish. I'll re-enable the outer lips now as the inner mouth is finished. For jaw open, the chin should also move down a bit, so add some keys to the head deformer and move the chin. I like to move the cheeks in a little bit because squash and stretch. If we are stretching something, it should get skinnier. The jaw open parameter is now fully keyed, so it's time to move on to the lips. We are going to have 4 keyed parameters on the lip meshes, which gets a little bit complicated. Technically, this means that there's going to be 36 ultimate shapes that are on the lips, which is a lot, but we only actually have to worry about 24 of them, and by keying everything in a specific order, we don't really have to worry about some of the duplicate keys. 2 very important things to remember is to only ever use the minimum number of keys possible on each parameter, which is either 2 or 3, and to only key each parameter when you are finished all of the combinations for the previous parameters that you have keyed. You can kind of think about it like a flowchart. We will start with mouth open, then mouth funnel, followed by mouth form, and finally mouth press lip open. We'll also only edit press lip open when funnel's value is 0, which allows us to cut 12 shape edits out of what we need to rig. The keys will technically exist, we just won't make any changes on them. Here's that same flowchart, but with the actual mouth and what it should look like with the parameter values as they are. So you can see that the 12 press lip open shapes off of mouth funnel are the same as the mouth funnel shapes. So the keys technically exist, but it's literally just the same shape, so you don't have to fuck with it at all when funnel is active. Saves a lot of time, looks fine. So of all of those, these are the actual keys that you manually have to make. So there's only 24 of them, which is not a lot because most of them are just small edits on what you've previously done. So as we just covered, we are going to be starting with mouth open. We will animate mouth open on the jaw open parameter first, and then we'll move it to its own parameter later. This just makes it easier to animate the mouth shapes because you're not always having to adjust multiple parameters just to see what it should look like. We will put keys on all of the lip lines and textures, and then we can open the mouth. The default neutral mouth open shape should generally open evenly on the top and bottom, so I leave the lip corners where they are. With our deformer motion from earlier, this should mean that we just need to lift the top lip and lower the bottom lip, and our mouth should look pretty good. For the neutral mouth open shape, you generally don't want the lips to pass the teeth. You can still show a little tooth, just don't make it look like the character is baring their teeth or like snarling or whatever. That's what the press lip open shape is for. I recommend keeping the corners a little bit pinched. It doesn't work for all art styles and rigging styles, but for the funnel shape, it'll blend a lot nicer if you have a bit of a pinch on the corner. If you keep your mouth open shape super round, then the funnel transition is always going to be a little bit rougher. I'll copy the form of my closed mouth corners and paste it to the open mouth so I keep my perfectly pinched corners. Because of the way that we animated the parent deformer, if we don't move the mouth corners at all, like I said earlier, you can copy and paste the corner from the default shape and it'll work just fine on the open shape and it won't mess up your edits. Make sure you're happy with your mouth open shape before you move on to the next step. Once you're happy with mouth open, we will animate the mouth funnel. The goal of VBridger and ARKit by extension is not to create expressions. So expressions are a fun result of using VBridger, but the focus of VBridger rigging is on lip sync and accurate mouth capture. For this reason, whenever you work on VBridger parameters, you want to think about the shapes a mouth makes while talking. I'll call out some specific sounds certain parameters should mimic to help you understand the goals of each shape. When riggers focus too much on making the VBridger parameters an expression versus something that you would do while talking, it often ends up looking pretty odd and not tracking super well. They're living their best life, but the lip sync will suffer for it. For mouth funnel, you're creating the shape that your mouth makes when you shoosh somebody. It activates when you make the sh sound, when you make the ch sound, and when you make the r sound a little, and then when you make the u sound. You can see my model made a funnel shape every time I made one of those sounds. The center of the lips separates and the corners pinch and squeeze together. The lip texture will roll in on the corners a little bit and roll out a bit in the middle. When you're editing mouth funnel, make sure that you enable and disable it and check how it transitions from off to on. You want to avoid having a weird shape anywhere along the lines because funnel is pretty much always going to activate when you're talking. It'll always be there a little bit. So if it looks funny when you're going from 0 to 1, like if you go to like 0.2 and it looks a little silly, your model's probably going to look silly a lot. So you want to be really careful with the transition. Once you're done with the default funnel shape, copy it with Ctrl-Shift and C, then open the jaw and paste the shape. When I work on the open funnel, I usually copy the jaw open at 1 and the mouth funnel at like 0.5 because it widens the funnel and makes it just a little bit bigger, which tends to work pretty well with the mouth. It does look a little bit weird because the transition is not smooth. So like the corners of the mouth don't quite look pinched, they're like weirdly flat. So we want to pull those in, round them out, and make a nice little pog face. While you're watching the transition between non-funneled and funneled, never add extra keys. I said this earlier, but I'm going to keep saying it over and over again. Never add extra keys. You will overcomplicate your entire life and make things a lot more difficult for yourself. Don't add extra keys. Typically, if the shape doesn't look pinched enough when it's transitioning from 0 to 1, it'll generally be because you don't have pinched corners by default and they need to be more pinched by default, or you need to exaggerate your funnel shape when it's at 1. The upper lip will hide what the bottom lip is doing, so you can really fuck with the bottom lip and make it super curved and exaggerated a lot of the time without any problem. Once everything with funnel is moving smoothly, it is time to move on to mouth form. We just need to make a smiling and frowning variation of everything that we've just rigged. It's easy to lose symmetry at this point, so we're going to add a guide. Right-click on the viewport and find the guide option and then hit Add Vertical Line. It'll add the line wherever you right-clicked. Check your canvas size and divide it by 2. Of course, this assumes that the model is in the middle of the canvas as we covered earlier in this video. Now we have a line that goes down the center of our model, so we can make sure that the vertices on our lip mesh that are in the middle of our lip mesh stay somewhere around the middle. If these shift around a lot, you end up with problems. So you want to make sure that when you're smiling and frowning that your center of your lips stays in the center of your model, pretty much. For smiling, we are going to stretch the lips out and up, and because we are stretching them, I am going to make them a little thinner. And then for frowning, they move down and in, and because they are squashing, I'm going to make them a little wider. Smile activates not only when you're actually smiling, but also when you make any sound that makes your mouth stretch. It activates a lot during talking, even if you aren't trying to smile. This is why we stretch it out a little bit. If you only rotate the corners up, it usually makes the mouth feel weird and constrained. Even with the pucker widen shape adding to the stretching, smiling does a lot of the legwork, so we make it a little wider and it'll look good. Frown tends to activate when you actually frown, as well as when you make your mouth skinnier or when you pout. It's pretty difficult to just frown without pouting or puckering. Frown tends to activate when you just open your mouth because the iPhone is picking up the corners of your mouth moving down, and it sees the corners moving down as frowning by default. So it's good to remember that it activates a fair bit, especially when your mouth is open. When the mouth is closed, you want to be careful not to push frown or smile too far below or above the teeth. When you open the mouth, you want to be really careful that you're not revealing the edges of your art anywhere. This is a pretty common problem in 3D and 2D. I have seen it many a time. Just be careful and keep your mouth closed shapes a little tamer than you might want, unless you can make your teeth art bigger so that you don't see the edges. For making the mouth open form shapes, I like to use soft select. It's really easy to just like really softly select the corners of the mouth and quickly adjust them. Then you can just use the deform brush to correct any issues. I also tend to have all of my meshes selected at the same time for frown and smile so that they all move together. Then I never have to worry about the corners separating at all or moving one mesh more than the other mesh. So having them all selected while you're making these edits will help prevent anything from separating by accident when it mixes with other keys that you'll be animating. Once the closed mouth and open mouth is smiling and frowning smoothly, you can turn funnel on and then do those versions of the smiling and frowning. Just a very slight pulling up or down of the corners is gonna be enough. Open mouth funnel needs a little bit more adjustment than the closed mouth funnel, but it's essentially the same. You're just pulling the corners up for smiling, up and out for smiling, and down and in for frowning. When you slide funnel on and off, funneling should always pull the corners in from whatever the non-funneled shape is. So just make sure that funnel is still smaller than whatever your default shape is. Don't accidentally pull funnel out further than your default shape. Make sure to check everything together as you go, combine different parameters and move them around while changing the other parameters' values. If any keys look funny, adjust them before moving on to press lip open. Once you're happy with all of the funnel, form, and mouth open shapes, add the 3 keys on press lip open. Press activates whenever you make a m, a p, or a b sound. The perfect reference for press lip is the Kermit meme face. It's just perfect in every way. The center of the lips rolls down because your lip technically rolls under your front teeth generally when you make this expression, and the corners pinch up as the lower lip pushes them. Since we are squishing the lips, we will also make them a little bit wider just so that we have some nice push and pull between press and lip open. Lip open is what you get when you smile with your teeth, as well as pretty much any sound that you make. It is essential to s, e, d, n, k, pretty much any sound that you make has a little bit of lip open in it. The default lip open shape should open evenly on the top and bottom, so the corners should generally stay where they already are. You just pull the center of the top lip up and the center of the bottom lip down. We're also going to pull the corners in a little bit because we pulled them out a little bit for press. They go in a little bit before open. This is the only time we're going to use corner generation for our rigging. So we're going to combine form and press lip open together. This will just add the 2 shapes together for all of the combinations while the mouth is closed and funnel is 0, and it'll make our lives easier. We really just want a lip open version of all of the form keys, and adding these together keeps it very consistent with the neutral shape. If you do them manually, it can look different, and then the lips can slide around a little bit more, and it just doesn't work as well. So we add the shapes together with the corner generation and then edit them a little bit to make them look pretty. For mouth open, it is very easy to manually adjust the press and lip open shapes. So for each form shape, while the mouth is open and the lips are open, we will just pull the lips back a little bit. Now is the time to bare the teeth. I'm going back on the closed lip open shape to pull the lips out a little bit. I forgot to do this earlier, but because press rolls the lips in, lip open should roll the lips out a little bit, just to have that opposite motion. For press, we will move the lips together a little bit and pull the texture in. On my model right now, it looks like this. Technically, now the lip forms are done. We just want to make sure they all look good together before we separate the lip keys from the jaw keys. To quality check them, we want to combine some of the parameters and move the values around, just to make sure everything's blending smoothly and that everything looks good together. And remember, when funnel is 1, press lip open shouldn't do anything. If dragging press lip open does something while you have funnel at 1, you need to copy your press lip open 0 key to your press lip open 1 and -1 keys so that it doesn't do anything. Otherwise, you will have some unexpected results when you are tracking. Once you're happy with the shapes and how everything is looking in the editor, select all of the lip meshes. Do not select any of the deformers. Click somewhere on the jaw parameter to get the little drop-down menu on the right of the parameter, and then hit the change button. This will allow you to move the keys to another parameter, so you can move all of the lip keys from jaw open to mouth open instead. Now when you open the mouth without opening the jaw, the mouth should open from the center of the teeth up and down, so that the middle of the mouth is still where the middle of the teeth are. Now you can see when I'm opening the jaw and the mouth separately, I end up with a gap under my bottom teeth. This is really not ideal, and this can show up from time to time when you're using tracking, so we need to fix that. My lips aren't opening evenly, so I'm going to add more keys to the outer mouth XY jaw open parameter on mouth open. So when the mouth is open but the jaw is closed, I just want to make sure that the center of where my lips are opening from is where the center of the teeth is. Centering the lip motion on the teeth just means that your teeth will always be equally visible and you won't end up accidentally showing too much bottom teeth or too much top teeth, depending on how you've animated your mouth. Next, we will be working on Mouth X, Shrug, and Pucker. These all affect the lips and outer mouth together pretty much, and will mostly be on deformers instead of the lip meshes. For some things, like Mouth X, we have a key and a blend shape parameter. We want the blend shape to match the keyed parameter at all times. In order to do this, we're going to create a follow physics group. Make a new group, name it after Mouth X, change the angle from 10 to 50, and change the minimum angle to -50 as well. Lower the shaking intensity to 0.2, and the reaction time, increase it to 5.7, and the overall acceleration to 7.7. You don't need these specific numbers, but something close to them will give you similar results. The goal is for our physics output parameter to follow our physics input parameter perfectly, so the output value matches the input value. When Mouth X is 1, we want to check that our output value is 100. If it's below 100 when Mouth X is 1, use increase output, the button over there. If it's over 100, use the decrease output button over there. This will automatically adjust the scale of the math that's being done on our output parameters so that it is always matching the full range of the parameters, minimum and maximum. Next, we will create the Mouth Pucker physics. Since we already have the physics menu open, we will just duplicate the Mouth X physics group and change the input to Mouth Pucker and the output to Mouth Pucker BL. All the same math should work. We are also going to add a physics group for the cheek puff. I'm going to duplicate the brow inner up physics group that we made in the previous video, as this is literally the exact same thing but for the cheeks. If you're just tuning into this tutorial, just copy the settings that I have on the screen as I do them. I won't call out the specifics. In order to work on Mouth X, we need to add a new deformer to the lips. So I'm going to select all of the lip meshes and add a new deformer. And we will call that deformer lips_x_pucker_shrug because it will have keys on all of those parameters. The deformer will definitely be too small, so we're going to scale it up so it is bigger than the mouth when the lips are open. We don't want our lip meshes traveling outside of this deformer when it's making any of the expressions that we've animated on the lips. Then I will add keys to both Mouth Open and Mouth X. I find it works better if we make the Mouth Open and Mouth X keys combine, because then we can make the open Mouth X look different than the closed Mouth X, which just gives us a little bit more control so we can make it look good. When I work on Mouth X, I think about it as the corner of the lip being pulled into the cheek, instead of just like moving the mouth over. Because functionally, that's what your muscles do when you move your mouth to the side. We are also going to use the parameter reflect to mirror the motion to the other side of the Mouth X parameter. Save us some time. When working on Mouth X, I try to keep the deformer's vertical lines as vertical as possible. This just helps the deformation stay smoother, especially when we move to making the Mouth Open version of Mouth X. If you actually like rotate the whole deformer too much, it can just transition a little bit weird. Adding extended interpolation will help round out the motion from left to right. I usually change the number of interpolations, the points, to 3. 5 is a bit much by default, and it really stacks as you work on the model and slows down performance. I'm going to reset the keys that I put on Mouth Open by removing them and then adding them back again. This is just so I can literally just steal all the work that I just did for the closed mouth and then edit it just a little bit for the open mouth. Now, Mouth X looks a little bit weird if you only put it on the actual lips, so we're going to add keys on the blend shape of Mouth X to the head deformer. Then we'll move the chin and the cheeks over and rotate them a little bit so that they follow the mouth when the mouth is moving on Mouth X. This just helps the whole face feel a little squishier. You'll need to open the physics window to see Mouth X and the Mouth X blend shape working together properly, otherwise you're just manually dragging the parameters yourself, and that's not a very good impression of what it'll look like. So check the physics window whenever you're checking any of the combined parameters that we've worked on. So the face is looking nice and squishy. The nose is not looking nice and squishy, so we're going to key the nose deformer on Mouth X BL as well. The nose is also just generally very stiff because we haven't moved it with anything at all yet. We're also going to have to move it with jaw open and mouth open as well. We could add actual keyframes on the nose, but I'm lazy, so I'm going to add a jaw open blend shape parameter. Since we now have a blend shape for jaw open, we need to add a physics group so it actually follows the jaw open parameter correctly. We will just duplicate the cheek puff physics group and we'll set the input to jaw open and the output to jaw open BL. This will let us use blend shape weights with the mouth open parameter to have the nose move back up when the mouth is open. So it'll move down with jaw open, but then if your jaw is open and you open your mouth, it should move up. So I'll open the Blend Shape Weights menu and then select Jaw Open BL, and then I will select Mouth Open to limit it by. And then in the weight, I will edit the graph so that when mouth is open, the jaw open blend shape is at 50%. And when we test it on the model, you can see that it just kind of squishes around with the lips and looks kind of nice. Since the face is moving left and right on Mouth X as well, it looks a little bit weird if the teeth don't move. So I'm going to add keys to all of the inner mouth deformers and also move them on Mouth X on the blend shape. Really quick, because I'm moving the inner mouth, I need to adjust a bunch of the outer lips as well. And I'm noticing a gap. Some of the inner mouth is disappearing when it shouldn't. So there's something wrong with the masks and we'll have to fix that. So I want to select all of the mask layers and then I will first scale them up. This just makes sure that they never end up revealing any inner mouth while the outer lips are moving. Now this is a very necessary step. You want to take the corners of the upper mask and move them down, and the corners of the lower mask and move them up. We draw the mask flat because it gives us a very clean edge, but we want them to cross over each other. By default, they don't cross over each other, which means that you get a little bit of a gap in your mouth masks. We don't want that, so we move them after the fact so they cover each other. There is still a gap, but now on the lip, not the inner mouth. So I'm going to isolate the masks until I find the one that is in the same shape as the missing lip. And then I will move the mask so that it no longer crosses over that area and looks good. Now I'll just check some of the other masks while I have the mouth moving around and just make sure that it is always staying where it should be and never going and crossing over the art where it shouldn't. For Mouth Pucker, we are primarily going to use the blend shape so that we can use blend shape weights with mouth open to have kind of two different things going on. This maximizes the control that we have over the parameter while giving us some very nice shapes. We will key all of the lip meshes on Mouth Pucker BL, and this will allow us to squish the lips together and pull the lip textures out to make the lips thicker. It's really difficult to get the squash and stretch only using a deformer. These blend shapes will only be active when the mouth is closed, so it never messes with our mouth open shapes. Then I will add keys to the Lips X Pucker Shrug Deformer on the Pucker blend shape and just make it skinnier and make it wider. Then I will limit it by mouth open so that it is only active when the mouth is open. So you can see when I have Pucker Widen active and I open and close the mouth, it switches between using the deformer and using the lips. A common problem with the widen parameter is that you end up revealing too much of your teeth and then your teeth look tiny in your character's mouth. So I'm going to grab all of the inner mouth deformers once again and add keys on the Pucker Widen blend shape. Then I will simply just scale the teeth up and down with Pucker and Widen. I will also go back and forth on Mouth X and make sure that the Pucker and Widen look okay when the mouth is moving on X as well. Later in the video, I'm going to end up redoing this part, but for now, this will be good enough. To start Mouth Shrug, I'm going to grab the lips and the inner mouth and key them all on the blend shape. Then I will literally just pull everything up. Once I'm happy with the position of the lips, I will move on to the head and the nose. Both will get keys on the Shrug blend shape, and then I will pull them up with the mouth. I'll give everything a real quick check in the physics editor so I can see the blend shapes moving along with their parameters, and I'm happy, so we're gonna move on to the cheek puff. Cheek puff will only be active in the middle of the face, and then we'll use the Blendshapes to disable it, depending on which angle you're turning. So you can see on my model, when I puff my cheeks, it will disappear on the cheek closest to the center. By using Blendshapes, we can just save ourselves having to match additional angle keys to the cheek puff keys, so Blendshapes work really well for this. The cheek puff should also affect the lips, of course, since we have a left and right cheek puff parameter, but they are separate parameters. We can't technically mirror our changes. So instead, I will add a -1 to the minimum of the cheek puff R, which is what we were currently working on, and then I will reflect the parameter. This will create a mirrored key so that we have a left cheek puff and a right cheek puff, and then I will just copy the keys to their correct parameter values. I also like to add a little squish to the eyelids when you puff your cheeks because it's very cute. Now it's time to limit the blend shape weights. We are only going to limit the weights for the head deformer, not for the lips or the eyelids. We only want the cheek to turn off when you turn to the side. So for each cheek puff, we are going to limit the blend shape weight by angle X. We want the right cheek puff to be 100% when angle X is 0 and -30. And we want cheek puff L to be 100% when angle X is 0 and 30. Now when I slide angle X left and right, you can see when it's in the middle, both cheeks are puffed, and when it's on the left, only the left cheek is puffed, and when it's on the right, only the right cheek is puffed. Now it's time to set this rig up in Vtube Studio so that we can find any remaining issues and solve them. First things first, we need a texture, otherwise we won't be able to export. I'm just going to throw all the layers on the texture sheet and use an automatic layout because I am lazy. Then all you need to do is export the model and put it in a folder and put that folder in the Vtube Studio Streaming Assets model folder. I leave it to you. I'll leave a link to their documentation below so that you can find out how to do that if you've never done it before. I'm assuming you know how to do it, so I'm going to move on. So you're going to want to get VBridger and Vtube Studio both open. I'll cover connecting VBridger to Vtube Studio for the first time as well, just in case you've never done that before. So first, connect VBridger to your iPhone. I use Vtube Studio for tracking generally because I think it works the best. You'll need your iPhone's IP to put in the IP box to connect. You can either find it in your phone's Wi-Fi settings or in the app itself. It's better to get it from the settings though because the app can sometimes be wrong. Then you should just be able to connect to your phone and the face in VBridger will move. Once the face is moving in VBridger, then we can hit the connect button on the bottom right of VBridger to connect to Vtube Studio. Make sure that you turn the API on in Vtube Studio or you won't be able to connect VBridger to it. Vtube Studio will ask us to allow the new plugin to work, so we will hit yes. If it's working correctly, you should see the numbers in the plugin panel moving once you've connected. Now we're ready to load our model and actually set up the parameters because they will exist. They will exist assuming that you've loaded an ARKit settings file in VBridger. Preferably 3.0, that's the most recent one as of this recording. So to get set up here, we are going to use Auto Setup in Vtube Studio because that will set up most of the parameters that we're going to need. I usually turn off the movement config at this point as it just adds extra motion that will get in the way of us seeing how our face is moving. Then first things first, to make this nice and organized and good, we are going to add folders. I'm going to add the face, eyes, mouth, and body. Then you just add all of the face ones to the face folder, the eyes and brows. I usually put the brows in the eyes folder, all the mouth ones in the mouth folder, and the body angles and breath in the body folder. So we are going to open the eye folder, and then we're going to change the eye smile minimum in value to 0.5 instead of 0. Mouth smile, the tracking input, has a default of 0.5, and then 0 is frowning and 1 is smiling. So if we leave the input minimum as 0, our eye smile will always be halfway up. You can see that the dot is halfway up when I leave this at 0, whereas when I make the bottom number 0.5 instead of 0, then the out value in the middle there is actually 0, which is the minimum value of our actual parameter on our model and what the default value should be for the model. So this makes it look how it's supposed to look by default. Any changes that I make to the right side need to also be made to the left side and vice versa. So I will also edit the eye smile right card. We will change the eye open smoothing to 0 instead of 10. 10 is very high and you will lose your blinks if you don't make this low. I don't recommend 1. 1 will still smooth too much and make you lose your blinks. Going back to the eye smile, I just wanted to double check that I'm actually hitting the full value range. I am not, so the value never really reaches 1 while I am smiling. It reaches like 0.8, 0.84 at a maximum. So I'm going to change the top in number to like 0.8 so that I actually get the full value of 1 on the output. Then we will go to the brow L and R cards and change the input to brow L and brow R. This will give you the Pixar eyebrows. We will add a new card with the plus button. We will call it Eye Squint L, change the input to Eye Squint Left from VBridger, and the output to Eye Squint Left, the parameter. And of course we'll repeat the process to create the right eye squint. Then we will add a new card and call it Brow Inner Up, change the input to Brow Inner Up, and the output to Brow Inner Up C. Brow Inner Up always activates when you lift your brows, so we want to tune it based on you lifting your inner brow when you're trying to keep your eyebrows down. So keep an eye on the value that you're getting on the inside of the card, and whatever the highest you can get it to be while you are not raising your eyebrows, use that value as your maximum or top in number. This will make it much easier for you to use Brow Inner Up. I'm also going to set the bottom in number to 0.1. This will just kind of delay its activation, so it's not always activating when I don't want it to be on. I will tune the eye squints the same way, so I'll do my best to just squint my eyes, see what the value is, and set the top in number to the maximum I can get it to reach while I'm making the expression. We are also going to make sure that the maximum out value of the eye open parameters is 2, not 1.9. Then we will move on to the mouth parameters. By default, Vtube Studio has 2.1 on the maximum out. We want that to be 1. Mouth smile is good by default. I'm going to add smoothing to Mouth X because it can be pretty jittery when it's at 0. Then it is time to add our VBridger specific parameters. So we're going to add jaw open first. We will name the card jaw open. We will set the input to jaw open and the output to jaw open and set the smoothing to 0. When you open your mouth now, the mouth open and jaw open should open together and look very normal. Next, we will add mouth funnel. So we'll add a card, call it mouth funnel, set the input to funnel and the output to funnel, and set the smoothing to 0. We will also tune funnel because it's very difficult to hit a 1 with your tracking. So make a pog face as much as you can, and then set your top in number to the highest number that you were able to get. Then we will add mouth press lip open, name it press lip open, set the input to press lip open and the output to press lip open. The default values should be fine. Now that we have press lip open, we can check if our smile is actually working. So you'll want to try smiling with your teeth in real life and see if your jaw is opening. We can either adjust the rigging or we can adjust the jaw open parameter to make it stay shut a little bit longer instead of opening right away. So to tune jaw open, I will slowly increase the bottom in number until I can smile with my teeth and my teeth stay closed in Vtube Studio. I want to be very careful that I don't make the value too high because then the jaw will stay shut when I'm trying to talk and I will look like I have lockjaw, which is bad. So you just want to be careful tuning it and find that happy medium spot where you can smile and talk. Next we will work on Mouth Pucker, so we will add a card, name it Mouth Pucker, set the input to Mouth Pucker and the output to Mouth Pucker. We generally don't need to tune Mouth Pucker, it should just work. You can generally also leave smoothing on and it will look fine. Then we will add cheek puff, so new card, cheek puff, cheek puff, cheek puff. Smoothing should probably stay on. Cheek puff likes to jump between 0 and 1 a lot. And this will smooth it out. It looks kind of silly, but if I turn my head to the left and right while I have cheeks puffed, you will see that one of them turns off as we wanted it to. So everything is working correctly. After cheek puff, the last thing we need to add is mouth shrug, so we will add a new card and call it mouth shrug and put all the shrug parameters in there. And shrug will generally need you to tune it, so pout as much as you can, see how high you can get that in number, and then set the maximum or the top in number to whatever the highest value you could get was. All of our mouth parameters are hooked up now, so we can go over to the Vtube Studio Live 2D Cubism Editor API window, and we can actually connect Vtube Studio to Live 2D. I recommend copying my settings here. Make sure that you have physics window only checked, otherwise this can get very heavy on your computer once you turn it on. Then we will hop over to Live 2D where we have our model open. We will open the physics window because that's where you can actually set up the connection. We will hit the preview dropdown and then external application integration settings. Then we just need to turn it on and give Vtube Studio permission to connect, and it should work. So now you can see all of your tracking in Live 2D. You don't need to export each and every time you make any update to your model. Unless you add parameters that you need to add to the tracking or something. If you add parameters, obviously they won't be tracked because Vtube Studio doesn't know that they exist. If you check the notify on file export in Vtube Studio, you can export this model and Vtube Studio will know that you exported it and update it in Vtube Studio so you don't have to drag the files around, which is also very convenient. So now we can essentially start looking for anything that we don't like the look of. Right now, the pucker, widen, and X parameters are adding together in a kind of shit way, where it looks really bad with the lips. This is because X puts the mouth on an angle, and pucker widen just scales the inner mouth horizontally, not on the angle that matches the X. So to fix this, I'm going to put the inner mouth under a new parent deformer and remove the current keys on X. Then I'll use the new parent to redo the X parameter. Then, when pucker widen activates, it scales along the angle of mouth X rather than just horizontally. It just looks a little better. I haven't moved the mouth at all yet. I told you earlier that you'd have an opportunity to move it up if you don't like how not moving the upper teeth looks. So we're going to do that now. as the face looks way too long without it. Banish head angles from your mind until the next tutorial comes out. We will just reorganize the deformers a little bit to get the head angles, and we will be keeping all of the keys that we've already made, so don't worry about it too much. We will cover the head angles when we get there. So I'll grab that inner mouth X deformer that I had just made and stick it with the outer lips XY jaw open, and then create a new parent for both of them. And I will simply call this one mouth parent. The mouth parent will then get keys on jaw open and mouth open, and when the jaw and mouth are both open, we will move the whole mouth up. In the physics editor, we can now see that the mouth moves smoothly, no longer looks too long on the face, and everything is just moving pretty smooth. The nose, however, is catching my eye. It's jumping around a bit and just doesn't really look right. It's kind of flying around on the face when it shouldn't be. Earlier we set the nose's jaw open blend shape weight to 50% when the mouth is open as well. We're gonna drop that down to 0 instead, so the nose actually just goes back to its regular position when the mouth is open. We will double check that it looks right in the physics editor with tracking, and it does, so I'm happy. I am not a huge fan of how I've animated the lip open shape when smiling. It just doesn't look as happy as I want it to, so I'm gonna go edit it. So I'm just gonna neaten up the shape, pull the corners out a little bit more to make it a more exaggerated smile, and really I just want to make it look nice. Once I'm done my edits, I will once again go into the physics editor and see how they look. The lip open smile is looking very good to me now. However, it's being influenced by the widen shape in a way that makes it look kind of stinky. So I'm gonna go edit the widen shape. The widen shape should just modify the mouth to be wider. It shouldn't fuck with the overall expression too much, which is what it's doing right now, and I don't like it. Since we have blend shape weights, we don't want to just remove all the keys because then we will have to redo our blend shape weights. So you just want to remove a key from one side of the parameter and put a new key there, rather than clearing the whole parameter. My new widen shape will not be as squished as my old widen shape. I'll only pull in the lips a teeny little bit. Now the lips will look correct when smiling rather than getting super squished and messing up the other expressions. Something else I'm noticing here is that when I pucker, funnel is activating quite a bit, so my lips aren't staying together when they should be. This isn't a rigging problem, this is a tracking problem, so we're going to go back into Vtube Studio to tune our tracking a little bit more. So you'll want to go into Vtube Studio and find your funnel card. Then I'll make the expression where funnel is activating when I don't want it to, and I'll keep an eye on the value on the inside of the funnel card. Then I will set the lower in value from 0 to 0.1 or 0.15 until it's not activating when I just pucker my lips, and it activates when I want it to otherwise. So I can still funnel my lips pretty easily, but it's not over-activating when I'm not making the expression. Back in Live 2D, there's a couple things that I want to do before I am done. I think it looks very cute when the eyes squish a little bit with Mouth X, so I'm going to go to my eyelid parameters. So I'm going to go to my eyelid deformers and add a little squish because I can and nobody can stop me. We will give everything a double check. Just smoosh our face around, see how it looks. And it's looking good, so the mouth parameters are done. Save for the tongue, which will be its own video later after the head angles, because head angles are important, and I want the tongue to be a standalone video, so you can apply it to any model that you currently have. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to join the VBridger Discord. It's not 24/7, but we do our best to respond to questions. There's a forum specifically for rigging, so if anything in the video confused you, hop in with the timestamp to the spot I lost you, and let me know where it stopped making sense. And I'll see you in the next video for head angles.